Welcome to the DC Shorts International Film Festival 2020 edition. I'm Peter Morgan, the DC Shorts Executive Director. And this is the Writers on Writing panel discussion with Lisa Tedesco, CJ Cox, and Kevin Haefelin. This year's festival is all online due to COVID-19, as you know. And despite COVID-19, we're excited to continue the tradition of panel discussions for a 17th year. I'd like to thank the screenwriters up front for participating in today's panel. I'd also like to thank the major funder, the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. DC Shorts, this year we are screening 163 short films in 20 showcases from 34 countries. If you haven't already, please visit dcshorts.com, check out the showcases and purchase tickets. We also have some events coming up. At 4 o'clock today, we have a filmmakers workshop on film distribution basics with Studio Fest. And at 7 p.m. tonight, we have the screenplay competition, which Lisa is one of the 5 finalists for. That will be led by Tony Award-winning actor, writer, director Hugh Heisel. And the winner of that competition will receive $2,000 in cash and prizes. So tune in tonight at 7 o'clock and be prepared to watch the amazing screenplays at a table read and vote for your favorite. Tomorrow, we have several events, including filmmaker workshop called Law 101, and 2 Q&As, one at 6 p.m., which is the LGBTQ showcase, and one at 8 p.m., which is the local filmmaker showcase. Sunday, we have the awards brunch at 2 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock, we have the film salon discussing diversity and storytelling. And, oh, I see CJ has joined us. Hello, CJ. And on Tuesday, lastly, in collaboration with the DC Black Film Festival, we have a panel discussion called The Power of the Shorts. Now let's begin Writers on Writing, where I'll be moderating the panel discussion. Welcome. Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh boy. So I'm based out of Connecticut. I own my own production company called Lady Film Media. What we do with that company is we try to create a platform for diversity through film and screenwriting for women of all backgrounds. I've done a plethora of short films. I've done lots of screenplays, as you know, because this is my 2nd year here at DC Shorts, great film festival. But yeah, I wouldn't say I don't have like an immense background in screenwriting. I actually just kind of started probably within the last 5 to 6 years, and so far so good, and I'm having a great time with it.
Well, 5 or 6 years, that's actually a good amount of time. CJ, is your volume on? Nice. See CJ. Yeah. CJ's volume, I think you can now be heard. Can anyone else hear him?
No.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh no.
Maybe try to come in and out again. And
well, yeah, CJ, try and log off and back on, and we will introduce Kevin and then come back to you. So apologies, everyone, and welcome to the year of the pandemic where everything is Zoom.
Yeah.
Kevin, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. So, well, first, thank you for having me to this panel and to the festival this year. I'm Kevin Haefelin. I'm a writer-director from Geneva, Switzerland, originally. I'm currently living in New York and finishing my MFA at Columbia University. So in film directing, screenwriting. And it's my 3rd year here at DC with a 3rd film. And this year I'm with a film called Trumpet. So that's about me.
And Trumpet is screening in showcase number 8, I believe. So if you want to check out Trumpet, go to dcshorts.com, find showcase number 8. Well, we'll wait for CJ to come back on, but we'll start by I'll ask you, what inspired your pursuit of writing? Lisa.
Oh, I'll go first. Okay. I think, I went to art school, I guess you could say, in San Francisco, and I actually wasn't sure what avenue to pursue via filmmaking. You know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go the directing route, the screenwriting route, the producing route. And you know, when you're 19, 20 years old, the world can just seem so heavy on you, and you don't really know until later down the line in your path. So I came home, meaning came home to Connecticut to figure things out. So then eventually I went back to school, and funny thing is, I was sitting in class one day, and I probably wasn't paying attention because I saw this ad come up on my phone for a writer for Curve Magazine. For those of you who don't know what Curve Magazine is, it's the world's leading lesbian platform. So they wanted someone to do like film reviews, television reviews for TV shows, and where I get to interview, you know, prominent lesbian film directors. So once that began, I obviously got the internship, but that propelled me into a direction of where I wanted to be now. And that's kind of where I am right now. That was like the turning point of my life, where I started out where I didn't know my direction. I know I wanted to be in the movie business, but I wasn't sure which part. And now after that, seeing that, you know, I actually do have a pretty decent ability to write, you know, columns and all that kind of stuff for the publication, and actually meet with these filmmakers who now I idolize, and now I find we have a connection and that we're pretty good friends. That solidified and like cemented my feet in the ground towards the direction of harnessing my craft in screenwriting. So I think for me, that was the turning point, and that's how I am where I am today.
Thank you. Kevin.
Well, I didn't start as a screenwriter. I started by directing films and directing other people's writing, and then I jumped into co-writing some movies. And it's really recent, and especially when I moved to New York in 2017, and I started a program at Columbia that I tackled into writing, and I started to write my own stuff, and I really enjoy it. I've wrote my past 2 films, yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a tricky thing to do, but I think that the experience in directing that I had in the past serves me a lot in the writing process as well. So yeah, that's about my writing story.
Well, you actually have both answered my next question was, did you study screenwriting in any capacity, or are you self-taught? And I think you answered that.
I wouldn't say I'm self-taught. I guess maybe I would be, but here's the thing. It's like you always have to start somewhere, and like, you know, I didn't really have the necessary tools, I guess you would say, to actually jump in. So I guess when I began, I would write and then send it to a friend who would format it for me because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I think she's here right now, Christy Hay. So she would be like, this is all wrong. Don't you have Final Draft? So I would write through a different software, and I would have friends, like my little group, my small circle of friends that I would hand it out to see, you know, critique-wise, review-wise, see where areas where I needed to fix. And then eventually I feel like I've definitely grown as a screenwriter, because before, I think I just, you know, your first draft is always your vomit draft. And I think I didn't know how to get from that vomit draft to a tight knit draft. So now I think from 5-6 years ago to where I am now, I definitely, from my inner circle, we've taught each other and we've bounced ideas back and forth from each other. And I think that's how I did my learning. I have never taken a screenwriting class, if that's your question, in my life.
And CJ?
Can you guys hear me now?
We can indeed. Thank
okay.
goodness. Welcome, CJ. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
We are slaves to technology these days. My name is CJ Cox. I'm a screenwriter, filmmaker. I live in Los Angeles, and I realized that a few years ago, I just went into my third decade of being a professional screenwriter. I quit my day job in '97, and yeah, it's been kind of an amazing ride.
Question that we've asked Lisa and Kevin: what inspired you to pursue screenwriting originally?
I have always written, but I originally started writing screenplays because I was doing video shorts, and I really wanted to make movies, and I realized that nobody was going to just come up and offer me a movie, and I always had stories. I've always been a storyteller. So yeah, it was always a desire to write. And I noticed that whenever I wrote anything, whether it was prose, whether it was a play, that in the back of my mind, there was always this idea that like, wow, if this is really good, somebody will want to turn it into a movie. And I realized, I think I just want to write movies. And so that was really my impetus for becoming a screenwriter. Did
you have any coursework, or did you study in college in any way, or is it all self-taught?
Yeah, once again, I was a journalism major in college, so I studied journalism and became a little disillusioned with that, just realizing that at the best, journalism is you are reporting your opinions about someone else's opinions about what actually might or might not have happened. And so I thought, yeah, I just want to go into fiction full time. So I was not trained. After I wrote the screenplay for Sweet Alabama, I felt, and I think a lot of us feel like, we have the imposter syndrome. And I felt like I should learn what I'm doing. I should figure this out. And so I signed up for a big weekend-long screenwriting course that was advertised in the back of the Writers Guild magazine. And I have to say, and it was not Robert McKee. It was somebody else. But I realized it was a terrible experience. This guy, who was essentially a failed screenwriter, had come up with sort of random theories about how you could do everything. And so the idea was that you would just sort of imprint your ideas onto some formula, and he had formulas for everything. And we did not hit it off. And by the end of it, the entire course just became sort of a shill for Scientology. So that was my one foray into sort of advanced education into screenwriting, and it did not really go well. So it's all, other than that, it's all been self-taught.
Interesting you mentioned Robert McKee. I haven't heard that name in years. I took his 3-day intensive course, maybe 20 years ago, and I found it really worthwhile. Yeah,
most people have, and I'm sure that that's the course that I should have taken, and maybe that would have changed the trajectory of my career or something. This one was not so good, and yeah, the instructor and I certainly didn't hit it off, and it was one of those things that was in a ballroom with like 250 people, and I thought, wow, this would certainly be a great way to make money, I suppose.
So when screenwriters get together, when you're together with all of your screenwriting friends, do you ask each other about your process? I'm just curious, Lisa, when you're together? Is that something you all talk about? And what is your process?
Well, we don't really like congregate in like this giant room and we sit in a circle. A lot of times friends will bounce off ideas off of me. Like they'll send me the script. They'll want to, you know, get some sort of notes for me to, and like I said before, I usually have an inner circle, and I think a lot of my friends have their inner circle of who they trust. So like if I send a script to 3 or 4 people, I usually find, you know, the repetitive note, and that's usually how I change things. And I feel like with most of my friends who are in the same boat as me, they do the same thing. I don't really, like my process is probably way different from theirs. Usually I have my phone with me at all times, and, you know, you go to your notes and you have an idea and you immediately write it down if you're not anywhere near your computer or anything like that. So if I'm, you know, out and about or at work, or if I'm with my wife, sometimes she gives me the ideas and then she'll yell at me and be like, did I just give you that idea? And I'll just write it down. So like my process is like, I'll get hit with something. I'll then do like a treatment, write a first draft, send it out and see how it's more like a feeler. Like I usually don't ask for notes the first time around, and then see how people feel about the actual story, and then I'll proceed. A lot of my friends are like, here's my first draft, tell me what you hate about it, and then I'll fix it. So I feel like everyone is a little different in their process, but my process is kind of like an idea will hit, I'll write it all down, I'll then construct it, and then I'll put out feelers to my inner circle. So that's usually how I work with my process.
Do you do storyboarding or use note cards up front, or?
I vision board. So like I have like note cards out and about, and then I'll cross them out, add new ones, say this sucks, put new ones in, just so you can get some sort of structure in place and how things are going to progress. But if my storyboards are probably stick figures, I cannot draw to save my life. But as long as you can see the camera movements and the movements of the actors and those storyboards and those stick figures, I think you're pretty good with those. Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, my process, first I collect ideas or thoughts, or it can come from sound, from music, from paintings, from anything in my daily routine, from a dream, and I just collect them. And what's hard when you're like at the early stage in writing or just drawing like a structure is not to judge your ideas, not to judge your thoughts, because they can mean things, they can mean the world, they can mean nothing. They're just like thoughts, and I think they're precious, and we have to cultivate them. So first, I just like try to cultivate them without judging, and then I just carefully take them and put them on cards. Not in scene. It's not even scene. It's not even a story yet. It's just ideas, thoughts. Even like colors, even like names. If I have like, I don't know, a line of dialogue, then I put it down, even if it's not connected to anything, just like stuff that I like and that speak to me at the moment. So I collect them, then I put them on those cards, and once I have like a bunch of them, then I just like put them together, and I try to see like a map, and I try to see if there's a story coming out of it. And then I arrange them in the kind of the direction that I want to go with. And once I'm happy and I have enough of those ideas and of those thoughts, then I start to maybe have ideas for scenes, and I start to put scenes together. And once I'm happy with all those, then I start writing pages, but not before really.
Okay. CJ.
Yeah, my process over the years, I've developed a really elaborate process of structuring. So I have 3 whiteboards representing sort of the 3 acts, and then I kind of, yeah, it's it's really detailed, but basically there are several sections. Like before I go into writing anything, So before I will write a full feature screenplay, then I need to be able to fill out this whole kind of diagram about where everything goes. It's the equivalent of having note cards, but for me it works better on a whiteboard just because I find myself changing things so much. But I find that if I can't come up with the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story, that sometimes, like just this morning, I came up with a concept, which I think, oh, that's the great first act of a movie. Where does it go? So me, I usually know what the inciting incident is, what the end of Act 1 is, that kind of sends us off in a different direction. I know how the movie ends, and I will know what I call the big pivot set piece, like sort of right in the center of the screenplay. What is it that sort of sends us towards the end? And unless I have those kind of components together, then I know that I'm not really ready to start kind of pushing forward and to really structure out something. So a lot of times I will have ideas and I will write out treatments also. But unless I'm really, really solid on all of those components, then I can't really go forward. So I just let it percolate a little longer.
Do you have friends that you share along the way, like Lisa was talking about?
I do, and I think that's really important for screenwriters, that when I was starting out, it was really important to put together a circle of friends that I trusted, that I really valued their opinion, and I felt we had similar tastes. And so I would give them my screenplays, and like Lisa said, if I heard the same feedback from 2 or 3 different sources, then I knew that this was something that I needed to address. Sometimes there were just random things that maybe people had missed something that I knew that I maybe didn't need to pay attention to, but it was important to note that if I heard the same feedback 2 or 3 times, then this was a problem. And now I have a writers group and we meet once a week. And so we will, we will bring in 10 or 12 pages of whatever we're working on and get direct feedback from them. But a lot of times, but I will also present treatments to them, and sort of the same thing and sometimes they will just say like, I hate that. And I think, oh, maybe I need to rework that. Maybe that's not worth pursuing. But yeah, I think it's important to have feedback, but at the same time, I don't think you want to just throw things at the wall and see whatever sticks. You don't want to have just anybody read your screenplay, because I think it's important to note that, yeah, you need to have people that you trust and know that you have people who have similar taste, that there are people who know what you're going for, that people will get it. If you're writing science fiction or something and you give it to people that just absolutely hate science fiction, that's not going to do you any good. So I think it's important to really whittle that circle down to people that that you really value their opinion.
I have something to add to that, actually. You brought up a good point. I actually have certain friends, like I have like my horror sci-fi guy, that if I write something a little too intense for my drama romance people, I'll be like, hey, how does this feel to you? So do you find that you have friends for different kinds of genres, or if you branch off into like a different genre that you're used to, you would find yourself giving it to someone different than your normal cohort?
I do. And the great thing about this writing group is that it represents a lot of people that write outside of genres that I normally write in. So if I do want to branch out, then there are people who are better at those genres. But also I do have one friend who is he's the easiest laugh in the world. So that's one of the reasons that we're great friends, is because he's got a really great laugh and we have a similar sense of humor. And so sometimes I will give him things because I know that I just need feedback to say, oh yeah, this was funny. That there are certain jokes that I will write just and think, okay, he's the only person who will get this joke. But sometimes I will put those in a screenplay just so that I can get a laugh from him.
Kevin, at what point do you rate your elevator pitch? And do you ever write it before you're finished with the screenplay? And actually, do you start talking to people, was more my question, pitching before you're done with the script?
Well, it really depends. I do sometimes, but not at the early stages. I just like to bounce back thoughts and ideas. But yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, on my process, I'm finishing my MFA at Columbia, so we still have like some writing classes and some mentors in our class we can share our script with. So this is really helpful, and that's really helping the writing stages, writing the second draft and all until the final draft. But about the pitch, no, I have a tendency to try to go to where I feel that the script is secure before pitching.
Lisa, same question.
I think for any filmmaker, screenwriter, you absolutely have to be prepared for the future of your script. So I think when you have the excitement of your idea, and you're playing around with it, and then eventually it comes to fruition, and you're actually getting words onto a page. It's just not ruminating anymore. It's not on your whiteboard anymore. You're actually in front of your keyboard and you're typing. I think after you get that momentum going, you absolutely have to think about which avenue to take with this. Now, I write, direct, and produce, so this is me coming from all three of those backgrounds. So I think for me, when I write a script, I think long-term, long run, 5 years down the line, you have to, for me, I think, what's this going to do in 1 year? Where are we going to be at in 2 years? So like my first short film, August in the City, when we did that, in 2016, it was just the excitement of being on set for the first time, my first like legitimate like production of that with an actual budget. And so like I had to think about where that was going to go. Before I even got onto set, we went through a budget plan. We went through where you see this in a few years. Like, are we going to go to festivals? Are we going to go to these festivals? Are we going to get distribution? So are we going to try and get money back? So like, I think once it hits the page and you're really, really serious and confident about the script that you're about to write or that you just finished, I think you really, really have to decide the avenue of attack and where you want to go with this screenplay. So with the one that we have in DC Shorts for the screenplay competition tonight, I am already 3 years ahead of where I am right now. So like, yes, we're going to have the screenplay competition tonight, and that's great. But my vision is already like, well, I'm going to try and work on distribution eventually. So right now, for me as a producer, screenwriter, director, my mind is always 10 feet ahead of me. So that's how I think of it anyways.
CJ.
Yeah, asking about log lines and elevator pitches. Yeah, for me, that's definitely an important part of the process because I find that it helps me refine my idea. So unless I can kind of explain it to myself concisely, I realize that I don't have it fleshed out enough to write. And also for me, the sort of elevator pitch or the log line helps me refine the theme to know what is this really about for me? What do I want to write about? So I find that it's important to have those, to have an elevator pitch or a really good log line together.
So writer's block, what do you do if that ever happens to you?
Who hasn't it happened to?
Do you have any, when writer's block happens, do you go off to another project? Do you put it down, pick it up next year?
I think for me, there has to be like a break. I know I've put things on the back burner for a while, or like something always comes up too. I mean, life happens, so it might not necessarily be writer's block, but when it is writer's block, I feel like I just have to wait for that moment. It usually strikes. At some point, I usually figure it out. I can always discuss it, bounce ideas off my friends, but like most of the time, I end up leaving it because it'll stress me out. I will have to back up, like rearrange my thoughts, and sometimes it'll sit there for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and I just need to breathe and know that I'll finish it eventually. But most of the time for me, I have to take just a break, or else I'll just go crazy with like too many ideas to try and counter that writer's block. So for me, when that happens, the best thing for me is to just take a time out. I don't usually go into another project. I think that's the worst thing I could do, because like I'm a very one thing at a time type of person. So if I'm working on a script, I will finish that before I jump into something else. So for me, definitely a nice little gap in time will probably help sort out the whole writer's block situation.
Kevin?
Well, I suffer from writer's block tremendously because I'm a very anxious filmmaker. But what I try to do is save myself in my process and try to like Lisa is saying, take a break, but not necessarily like a long break. It can be walk the dog, just go running, go hiking, just do something. Try to like unplug your head for a second and try not to whip yourself in the back, because that, hurting yourself, trying to like pull out stuff from you, it's not going to be good, and it will hurt you more than it can do good. So and I've suffered a lot doing that to myself, so I don't recommend people do that. Just like take it easy and try to like don't fight against it. It's like it's like fighting in a leaf, in a bush or something. If you sometimes you just slide in it, then you can get out of it. If you fight, then you're gonna get hurt. So don't fight, and just like take care of yourself, take care of your health, eat well, and things will do better. We're like a human being, so we're not machines.
CJ, did you want to add anything to that?
I agree. For me, it always seems like writer's block hits the worst when I have an actual deadline, when I'm on a script and I need to deliver it. So I always think it would be great to just let this sit for a while, but sometimes I don't have that luxury. So I agree that for me, when I really get into it, the best thing to do is to step away and go do something else. Because I find that sometimes the best ideas come in the periphery. So if I can focus on something, and a lot of times just something physical, like hiking or working in the garden or anything, then I notice in the back of my head, I'm working that out. But when I'm just stressing on it, trying to put it in the forefront of my consciousness, then yeah, it's a nightmare, and I don't sleep, and it causes so much anxiety. But one thing that I do utilize is when I get stuck in a script and I just don't know, this scene isn't working. I don't know what's gonna, how to fix it. I don't know where I'm going with this, that I get really blocked that way. That a lot of times what I will do when I'm on a deadline, since I don't have the luxury of time, is to jump ahead. That I think, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but I know what happens in that scene in the third act. So then I will just jump ahead and I will write that scene. I will start writing the scenes that I know. And sometimes when I write enough of those, then I realize, oh, okay, I have most of this. I just have to connect it all together. and then I'm able to go back and get over that part where I was blocked, because then no longer it's not keeping me from, oh, the next 60 pages of this screenplay. Then it's just, oh, I just have to write 3 pages and I'll be fine.
Thank you. You've all mentioned that you've played different roles in filmmaking, in addition to writing, directing, or producing. So when a project of yours is actually in production and you are just the writer, you're not directing it, how involved do you get? CJ. Are you heavily involved, or you just pass on the script and that's it? Or
it depends. My first involvement with this studio process, I was so excited because the feature script had gotten a green light. We had a director, movie star attached. Things were going, and I was putting all my stuff together in my little briefcase to go off to a meeting at the studio where we were going to discuss the next draft. And the producer called me and said, no, don't come. The director said that if you're in the room, he will walk out. And that was my notification that it was no longer my project, which was tough. That's not the way that it always goes. I have been on the sets on other projects that have filmed where I am just the writer, and that's great. That's interesting. It's exciting to see the stuff that you have written happen. But I noticed that it's interesting being a writer on the set. You are the only person who is already done with your job. And so there's not a lot to do. And it's like being the kid who arrives at school after all the cliques have formed, because unless you're involved through pre-production, which isn't usually the case, then you're just sort of hanging out, and the director might ask you to say, hey, what about this scene? What do you think of punching that up or something? But yeah, it's not, being a writer on the set is so different than being a director or being involved as a producer or something like that, because you're essentially done. So I find for projects that I have written that where I'm just the writer, it's great to visit the set, and but unless the producers actually want you there on a day-to-day basis, I find that I will go spend a little time on the set and then say, like, okay, good luck, Godspeed, and come home and get back to work on something else, because it's it's basically you and the plants that are basically the least active ones on this there.
Lisa, same question.
Well, I think the first project I did, I wasn't quite ready to direct, so I asked a friend of mine to direct for me. So in turn, I did stay on to produce. That's the thing. So I was in charge of, hiring everybody and whatnot here in Brooklyn. So I was still attached deeply, because I guess you would say it was my first, it was my baby, it was my passion project. The script I actually had last year at DC Shorts was optioned in Los Angeles. So I guess it's all about language in your contract as well, because we drew up an option agreement. The guy who runs the production company over out there, he's producer, he actually left it up to me to specify the language of the option agreement. So within it stated that nothing could be changed without going through me first. So I still felt like I have the power. And unfortunately for us with that project, COVID happened. So that was supposed to happen in May, but I guess it's gonna hopefully get the green light in LA for spring of next year, but you know, you never know. But for that, he did sign me on as a producer as well. So although, yes, I gave up the script as a writer and now it's in his ballpark, I'm producing to get, you know, certain things attached to that project. So yes, I gave up the script itself, but I'm still involved in a certain way. And just like CJ said, it all depends. It's like you can be done as when you sell it, or, you know, maybe they would want you to stick around. But I think if you're actually selling a script, you're basically done. So, but for me, with the last one that was optioned in LA, I'm actually able to go out to set and be a producer. So that's where I'm at with that one. What's to come with the next ones that I write? I don't know. We'll see. Probably they'll go through my production company, and I'll produce and direct, or produce and hire out for a director. So it can go either way.
Kevin.
Well, I mainly have only written what I directed. So I've directed other people's script, but I haven't written anything for somebody else. So I don't have this experience, unfortunately.
Next question. Does the phrase "know what you write about" apply to you? Kevin, we'll start with you. Now, that's when you hear people talking about writing, that's one of the first things I always hear. Know what you write about. Does that apply to what you've written?
I don't think so. I mean, to some extent, yes, and to some extent, no. I mean, I'd like to be surprised by what I'm writing, and sometimes it's like an unknown. When I'm in the early process, when I create something, I like to be surprised by what I discover, and if I know everything already, it will feel boring. It's like when you know everything when you come on set. I mean, yes, you do your homework as a director, you prepare, you break down, but then once you come on set, as a director, I try to forget all of that, and I try to be surprised by what I discover on the day, and what I discover with the people I'm around. So when I'm writing, I have a tendency to do the same. You know, I just like go with the flow, and when I'm researching and when I'm discovering what I'm writing, I like to be surprised.
Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with yes and no. I think my earlier projects, I definitely wrote what I knew, what you know, resonated with me, what I absolutely knew from my past, my present. But going forward, I feel like I try to take on new things that scare me. So like, I was never one to do anything with the horror sci-fi genre, and now I find myself dabbling in it and researching the genre and trying to find scare tactics and, like, you know, trying my best to try new things, I think. And I think that's just somehow a way to get better as a writer, is like, if you just stay in this bubble of what you know, you'll never, you know, you might not ever get out of it and try new things and see that you might actually be good at something else. So I definitely think in the beginning, I was definitely tied to that concept. I still am in some aspects, but I think moving forward as a professional in this realm, I think putting yourself out there and trying new things in different genres and different ways of writing, I think is definitely a strength to have.
CJ, write what you know. Does that apply to you?
It definitely has, because yeah, I definitely have written what I know, because I've taken, like, my first feature that I wrote and directed was taken from different disparate aspects of my own life. So I was writing what I know, but it's interesting because they also say, but does that limit us? Do we limit ourselves to only what we know? And I don't think that we should, because I have it's funny because I have developed a reputation as a Southern writer. And I get a lot of things where they say, hey, we've got a Southern project and we need a Southern writer on this. And the truth is, I'm not Southern. I grew up on a ranch in Eastern Nevada. So I'm a redneck cowboy from the West. And the first script that I wrote was set in that world. But people read sort of this Western twang. On paper, it read like a Southern drawl, and people assumed that I was Southern. And it just kind of started from there. And I acknowledge that, no, I'm not, but people are like, you're close enough. And so subsequently I have sort of become Southern and spent much more time in the South, and I love it, but it's actually not what I know. And I find that, yeah, we branch out and we find topics that interest us. I've got a project right now that they're trying to find a way to put into production this fall. And that is about a woman who gets deported to Mexico. And I've wrestled with the question of, I mean, somebody else came to me and said, should you be writing this? Because there's a lot of talk about cultural appropriation, and I understand that, and I want to be sensitive to that. But at the same time, this was something that really interested me, and I wanted to put myself in the place of this woman. And at the same time, I think that we as people understand what it's like to feel displaced, and that I think that when we get to the core humanity of a project or the characters, that we find that we know so much more than we thought we did, that we can understand people who are from different worlds than we are, because I think when you get down to it, so many of us share the same human experience. So if we can write from the truth of that, then I think that it allows us to sort of stretch what we know and expand our boundaries.
Thank you. So for the aspiring screenwriters that are watching, I have this question. What mistakes have you made, if any, that you'd be willing to share? And it might be directly writing, or it might be pitching somebody at the wrong time, knowing when to hold off, or maybe you haven't experienced anything. But yeah, just for anyone who's watching that can benefit from the experience of something that you might consider you could have done better.
I think it's about trusting the process and your process. I don't necessarily think I made major mistakes while writing, but I do feel that you're always learning about it, and I don't think anybody is perfect. So even if you have 5-6 years, you're getting an MFA, you have 3 decades, I mean, we're all still learning, and it's always going to be, someone's going to come into your life and have this great idea or this great background or this great story for the world to tell. And then for me, I think it's having that trustworthy circle of people to talk to, especially in the screenwriting community, because we all want to help each other. So you're never going to find anyone who is like, well, if they're professional and nice about it, you're never going to find anyone who absolutely says no to like helping you and reading your script, because they're going to want the same thing in return. So all I can say is help each other out. And I think the worst thing is when people take criticism too seriously and they get offended by that, because when I first started out, I kind of had, I think that will probably be my mistake, is when I couldn't handle criticism to the level that I can now, because back then I just thought everybody was just against me, and that's not the case at all. If you're in your circle, they want to see you succeed. So when they give you a criticism, don't take it as something negative. It's definitely something positive. So for me, for the advice to give, you're gonna fall on your face. You're gonna write something that probably, you know, isn't too perfect at first. But if you find your circle, the people that you trust, you're gonna see that you're gonna grow, and you're gonna grow, and you're gonna keep growing, and you're gonna grow until, you know, you win that Academy Award, and even after that. So like, you're always constantly learning. So just keep an open mind through the process and trust it.
So we'll go from Kevin to CJ next, and then we will answer a few questions that I have seen pop up in the feed. Kevin, any advice or?
Yeah, I mean, what I learned in my process, and I learned the hard way, was really not judge yourself, not treat yourself kindly as a writer, and because if you're like judging what you're doing, then you will basically lose a lot of time, and you are not going to move forward, and then you're like stuck like a tire in the mud. So just like get it out and treat those elements that go out of you gently and kindly and respectfully, and really don't and there is no way when you write that it's going to be perfect at first, and that happens to the best. That happens to everyone. So when you do something, when you create, it takes time, and it takes steps, and it takes rewrite and rebuild, and then it takes time to even like let ideas rest for a bit, and then you come back to it. It's not a process that is like boom, you start writing, and then all of a sudden you're featuring. It's amazing. It takes time and patience.
CJ.
Yeah, I would say that, and it's not necessarily, these, I guess I learned this by mistakes that I made, but an important lesson that I learned early on was when to step forward and when to step back, because as a writer, your script tends to be, it tends to be represented without you. I mean, as a producer, as a director, you're always sort of there, and you can advocate for you and your work. But as a writer, your work tends to be happening like, you know, people are reading it when you're not there. So it's important to learn when to really advocate for yourself. And to step up and say like, no, I need this to happen, and I won't, I won't sign this kind of option. That just when you need to really be strong and hold on to things, but at the same time, when to step back. And in a couple of ways, that sometimes there are things that you just realize, okay, you're beating your head against the wall, and here's a screenplay that it might happen, it might not, but maybe it's time to, if you've done all you can, maybe it's time to step back and start on something else. But at the same time, like Lisa was saying, for me, I went into things so defensive about your screenplay. It's your baby, and especially the first one that I felt personally that oh my God, any criticism was a personal attack on me, just because you do feel so close to it. And so learning when to just take a step back. And fortunately, my first screenplay was optioned by Norman Lear. And so when we went into this meeting about a rewrite and changes that they wanted to make, at first I just everything made me want to get my, and I'm sorry, that's
is that okay?
That's and it's so loud, and I don't know if I turn my computer, if I turn my volume down. Can you guys still hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I found that I was just so defensive about criticism and comments that they were making, and a voice in my head that was very, I guess, self-preservation just said like, you know, there's a possibility that this guy knows what he's talking about. So maybe you should just shut up and listen. And in 5 minutes, he sort of presented these ideas that I found myself thinking, oh, he's not trying to kill this thing or change it or destroy it, which is sort of what you feel as a screenwriter sometimes. But I thought, oh, he wants to make it better. And oh my God, those ideas are genius. If I had thought of those, I would be so proud of myself. So I think, yeah, knowing when to just say, okay, I've written my screenplay and it's out there, and now I just need to stop down and listen to what people are saying and really try to hear their feedback. That was a really important lesson, and a mistake that I made at first by not listening enough. So I would encourage people to do that.
That is very good advice. So we have 2 questions I'll read. One from Jeff. How did you get your connection to get film options? Very good question. We'll start with CJ, Kevin, Lisa.
I fortunately, I mean, I live in LA, and I specifically moved to LA all of those years ago to get into the film business, because I knew that if I was going to make those connections, that it needed to happen here. But now I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that is happening everywhere. And especially as a writer, your material can come, that you can submit it to people anywhere. But one of the things that I found really, really great about making connections, and this might be just specific to, I mean, it might be specific to Los Angeles, but the people that you really want to read your work, they're really busy, and they are getting hounded a lot by people to say, like, hey, read my screenplay. But the people who work for them, like their assistants, they're the gateway and they're the door. And the way that I got my first agent was that my screenplay had been submitted, but her assistant went home to this really miserable, dysfunctional family Thanksgiving in Seattle. He said, where it just rained constantly, and he really had a terrible time. But he read my screenplay, and it was the only thing that made him laugh over the weekend. And so when he returned home after the break, he put my screenplay on my agent's desk and said, you need to read this. And that's how I got an agent. And so my advice has always been, for making those connections, to really reach out to people's assistants, because they, first of all, they work for these people because they have their ear, and the way things work in the business is also make those connections with those people, because in 6 months, 2 years, whatever, there's a possibility they could be running a production company, because everything changes very fast. So find those people who are up and coming, and reach out to them, because those were really important connections for me.
Kevin?
None of my film has been optioned yet, so I cannot speak about that.
Lisa?
So with the one that was optioned, I guess that paperwork was signed last year. It was interesting because I had worked at a convention in Las Vegas prior in 2018, where I was the audiovisual coordinator. And I had met panelists, to put in perspective, this was, I don't know how to explain it. It was a fandom-based convention for queer representation on TV and film. So basically you would have a lot of female LGBTQ people coming in, and like they were basically fans of these shows, like anything on CW or sci-fi or things of that nature. And I would work behind the scenes, and I actually met people through there. And there's this, there were these panelists from this Brazilian TV show, web series called Red. And they had found out about me and my production company and my film that had done very well on the circuit. So they reached out to me and wanted to actually start another series where I was the writer. That didn't pan out, but then in turn, he wanted one of my short scripts, so he optioned that one. That's how that all worked out. I feel like that was a coin toss. That was something that I don't think really happens on a normal scale. But for me, I really think, you know, I don't live in LA. I live in Connecticut. I live in, I'm only about an hour and a half away from Manhattan. So a lot of times I will buy the very expensive like industry passes to like Tribeca, the New York Film Festival. I'll go to Toronto. We've been to Cannes, and I'll actually do the whole networking thing that way. And I will take meetings, and I will talk to people, and I will network, and I will, drink with them and have a good time. And then the next day, we'll swap cards. I think putting yourself out there is definitely a big part of it because, that's how you get a lot of people their ear to your projects, and then in turn you can hear about their projects. So I know it doesn't work for everyone. I mean, it's, out of like the 300-400 people you meet, maybe 2 or 3 of them are actually interested in what you have to say. But I feel like if you don't have the ability to, get yourself out to LA or live in LA or basically where Hollywood is, I think a good start is to actually go to these independent film festivals and see what they're all about. And especially like, I think, once COVID is lifted, get yourself the DC shorts. I've met so many amazing people in Washington last year where we still are in connection, and I talk to them all the time, and they're making amazing films now. And, so I think a big part of it is just having the confidence to speak your truth and basically learn the science behind pitching and networking and getting yourself out there and getting this big scope of the industry. So, so far that's kind of what I lean towards. Right now, you can't really do too much. I mean, I know a lot of the festivals are going virtual.
Most of them are. So
yeah, if not all.
We've actually we've just passed the 1 hour mark. Does everyone on the panel have time for one final question asked by Abby?
Sure.
Kevin?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Abby's asking about favorite films. I'm going to twist that a little bit. What is your favorite film based on the screenplay? You just think it's the best screenplay ever written. What is your favorite film?
I mean, it's tough to answer about the best screenplay ever written because it really depends on what type of, filmmaking you're into.
Well, you personally.
But personally, I mean, what I can speak about what touched me in the film that I'm currently diving into, and it's the work of Robert Bresson, like Mouchette, those kind of movies, and the work of Aki Kaurismäki, who is the Finnish director for people who know him. That's the kind of filmmakers that I love. And if you go to the American counterpart of Kaurismäki, you can talk about Jim Jarmusch, who is also a big inspiration for me. So his screenplays we cannot compare a Jim Jarmusch screenplay to a Casablanca or to a Godfather or to those very well done screenplays. So it's just a different what speaks to you in the moment.
CJ?
It's interesting because during the pandemic, being being stuck at home, we are watching a lot of old movies. We have gotten into old things. So I would have to say, currently, the films of Billy Wilder, I feel, are just so well written. Going back, my son had never seen Double Indemnity, and so we just watched that. And the line where Fred McMurray is leaving the house after meeting, after their very first meeting, and it's like she said something about like, I wonder if you get what's going on. He's like, yeah, I wonder if you wonder. And I just thought like, oh, that's just some great writing throughout.
Was that part of the TCM day-long Barbara Stanwyck Festival?
Oh, no, because I guess randomly with HBO Max becoming a thing, we realized, oh, we have, I think it's TCM Classics or whatever. So we've been digging into that.
Lisa.
Screenplay wise, well, so I devote a lot of my attention and heart and soul to female writers and directors. So I can make a list a mile long, but I think I'm very close to Olivia Wilde and Greta Gerwig and Ava DuVernay and I think like Sofia Coppola, and I just really love what they do and how they write, and they direct as well. So like they're able to take their words and actually like put it onto the screen the way they want. So like I feel like with that cohort, I'm very attached to them. So I feel like they have a very good, I guess you would say like screenplay to script to screen output for them. So those would be my people.
Thank you. Lisa, Kevin, and CJ. Thank you so much from me and the DC Shorts board and staff. And thank you so much, everyone who Zoomed in. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Great.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.